Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm extremely excited about tonight's class. You're going to ask me why?
Why, please?
Oh, I'll tell you why. Because I think I cracked this code. I think I figured this out. And it was driving me absolutely meshuggah. Not so much to understand the pshat, because the pshat is somewhat straightforward. But the demands that Rabbeinu Bachaya seems to be making of us seem to be inordinately difficult and like totally unreasonable. Number one. And number two, I didn't see what it has to do with Bitachon. This is about trust in Hashem. So yeah, it's about avodas Hashem and about humility. It's very nice. What does it have to do with the subject at hand? And then the more I thought about it and researched, the more difficult it got, until I think I figured it out. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Anyway, I'm doing the best that I can, and like I said, I think I figured this out. And if it is as I think, all I can say is, wow, that's like amazing stuff. Okay, with that little preface. The soul of success. This is the 118th consecutive share in Sha'ar HaBitachon, and there's our 45th share in this fourth section, the fourth chapter of Sha'ar HaBitachon. We're taking this slow. We're going through paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence. We're not in a rush to finish. We want to learn this and understand it right. So, for purposes of brevity and just to make sure we're all on the same page, I'm going to quickly recap how we got here, because this is the climax of this particular segment. This brings this particular segment to its successful conclusion. And it's called the soul of success. So we're trying to figure out how we should apply Bitachon, trust in Hashem. Because once we do this right, that's our ticket. We can be calm, cool, relaxed, serene, tranquil. We never have to worry again. Ever again. No stress. You could live forever. It's like unbelievable. But you got to do it right. That's the thing. That's the thing. And if you apply or misapply trust where it doesn't belong, not only are you not doing yourself a favor, but quite the contrary. If people use trust to relieve themselves of obligations and responsibilities that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you, it's not a good thing. In fact, quite the contrary. So Bitachon and trust is not a cop-out. It's not a person saying, oh, I'm not going to do anything. God's going to do this for me. That's wrong-headed and untrue. God doesn't do for us what we are supposed to do for ourselves. But if we have perfect trust in Hashem and we do the best we can, then we're good. And then we can enjoy the fruits and benefits of Bitachon. This is applied on a broad range of material reality as we went through it, detail by detail, situation by situation, as they vary, as they change. And then we came to a bit of a challenge, as mentioned in the previous episodes, where Bitachon and Bechira seem to collide. On one hand, Hashem tells us, Hakol bidei shamayim, everything's in heaven's hands. How healthy we'll be and how much parnasa we'll have. How things will go in a material way, all in Hashem's hands. Our actions don't actually make anything happen. Essentially, we are providing cover for God's miracles. We're making it look natural. In Torah literature, that's referred to as creating the keli, making the vessel. So I worked really hard, and I did my work really smartly, and I was strategic, and I was committed and devoted, and that's why I'm a millionaire, a person will say. And the truth is, that's not why he's a millionaire. He's a millionaire because Hashem decided he should be a millionaire. And he has a friend who worked as hard or harder, who is as smart or smarter. And he's bankrupt. Not because he's smarter than his friend, but because Hashem chose to bless him with success, and Hashem didn't choose to bless his friend with success, because it's in Hashem's hands. And the more we trust in Hashem, the more we actuate and bring forth those brachas. That's another amazing piece of the Bitachon equation. Bitachon actually opens the portals for Hashem's bracha unlike anything else. But when Hashem tells me it's my job, Hakol bidei shamayim, chutz, with the exception of Yirat Shamayim. Yirat Shamayim is a code word for anything connected to religious, spiritual, or moral activities, the things that Hashem places in this world to accomplish and achieve. I can't say it's in Hashem's hands. If it would be in Hashem's hands, then what is the value of living a life of Yiddishkeit? It's in Hashem's hands. Hashem lights Shabbat candles. Hashem puts up mezuzahs. Hashem puts on tefillin. That doesn't make any sense. Hashem says that's in your hands. So that's a problem. So we had to work this out. We had to work out which part of that is actually my responsibility, and my efforts are making all the difference. But at the same time, Bitachon plays a role. And Hashem's still doing everything, even though He's giving it to us to do. And we made a division between the action and effort that we have to take and the fruition. And we said that even when it comes to mitzvahs, just because somebody made the effort doesn't mean that he or she is necessarily going to succeed at doing a mitzvah. That's still in Hashem's hands. What did Hashem place in our hands? The obligation and responsibility to make the right choice to the best of our ability and to muster the courage and conviction, the gumption and the strength to follow through and to act. And it's never going to be easy. It was never harder. And it was never easier. Because in every situation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes it challenging. Exactly as challenging as it has to be. Not one iota less, not one iota more. And He doesn't give us extra strength or wherewithal or ability. He gives us exactly what we need to accomplish exactly what we're supposed to, and the rest, that's in our hands. Now this gets even more complicated when there's other moving pieces, as in other participants. I'm not the only player in the arena. So it's not only my freedom to choose, it's also their freedom to choose. We went through all of this. This is just an introduction bringing us here. So we went through all of this. And in the immediate past episode, we talked about the need to maintain anonymity when possible. And we highlighted this idea that being humble and staying anonymous and not patting myself in the back or telling everybody what I did is a very important thing to do, but it's not more important than doing what I have to, doing what I can do. And when we have to make efforts, if my desire to remain anonymous impedes or in some way supersedes the efforts I'm expected to make, then it's not a good idea either. Okay. So once we have all of that in place, then at that point, we're able to move forward now, and we're able to understand how it is that once success actually arrives, the person who achieves success in Bitachon has a very specific attitude to adopt. There's a way to view success, a spiritual way to view success. And viewing success inappropriately, apparently, can really get in the way. That's today's lesson. So if you're following along in the Kihat version, we're on page 177. And I have to tell you that in my humble opinion, I'm not so comfortable with the preface that they wrote. I'm actually going to read their preface out loud. I made you photocopies. I'm going to read the preface. I'm going to tell you why I'm not so sure that this is fully appropriate. So the preface that the elucidator placed here is, and I'm going to read it, since as mentioned above, when a person does a mitzvah in public, it is more difficult to harbor pure intentions. So we talked about in the previous episode. He must therefore remind himself that he will not get any more honor from the people based on his actions. We talked about the concept of kavod and of honor and so on and so forth. He's not going to get more honor. No one has the ability to cause him benefit or harm unless decreed so by God. This is very much in keeping with what we learned in the previous episode. Now the supposition here is that what we're about to learn is a continuation only of the last information that we studied. Only of the last information. But I'm not so sure that's accurate. So firstly, it does follow the Pas Lechem. The Pas Lechem, which is one of the important commentaries on the Sha'ar HaBitachon, Pas Lechem says like this: V'chasher yigalgal habeira, when Hashem causes, or so to speak, brings about the success that happens. says the Pas Lechem, that we're talking here about doing a favor for somebody else. You have the good fortune of providing for somebody. Whether you provide for them materially or you're providing for them spiritually, when you have the good fortune of being the provider, being the benefactor, you can get to your head. And you start to think, hey, I took care of you. Don't forget who saved your life, Don't forget who took care. Don't forget who gave you parnasa. I'm just saying, because I did it. So remember that it's me. And it's almost like difficult for a person not to say that. When we work really hard and we went out of our way, did somebody a favor, people think, I did them this favor. But actually, it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I had the privilege of making the right choice. I could have made the choice, made the effort, and not succeeded. What would I say then? I said, well, I tried to help, so at least give me credit for trying. That's all you ever get credit for. It doesn't make a difference. I came across a beautiful story of a couple who had tried very hard to help the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin get a visa when they were attempting to escape Nazi-occupied Europe. And in the end, their efforts did not bear fruit. But the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were very grateful to them. And they went to visit them and to thank them, because actually it doesn't make a difference whether somebody's efforts were effective or not. Efficacy comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What you can be grateful for is somebody making the effort. They tried to help you. Be grateful. Doesn't matter if it did or didn't work out. As long as they made a sincere effort, you should be grateful. So that's what the Pas Lechem tries to say. Let's take a look at the actual words of the Sha'ar HaBitachon. I'll tell you why I'm not so comfortable with making a suggestion. This is specific only to the last paragraph or two. V'chasher yigalgal habeira al yedei mitzvah. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now the word yigalgal it's one of those interesting words that we come across again and again in the translation of the Sha'ar HaBitachon of Rabbi Yehuda ibn Timid. I just want to say, over here they translate it as causes. And it does mean that, but it's not, there isn't really a precise translation for causes. So in the Art Scroll they write, when a creator gives a person the opportunity. Yigalgal, they translate it as gives. Okay, it doesn't really mean Hashem gives, but it's almost like Hashem arranges. Here in this other translation I have, when the creator brings about. The word galgal comes from the term a galgal, a wheel. So when you put the wheels in motion, the wheels in motion will invariably lead to, whereas they say, once the wheels are in motion, once things are rolling your way. So the wheels in motion, HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts the wheels in motion. Now God didn't do that. He did it, and she did it, and the other one did it. No. God put the wheels in motion. So Hashem arranges al yadai, through you, a mitzvah. So for example, Hashem arranges that you have the good fortune of making a parnasa, and you have the good fortune of being in a position where somebody thought to ask you for help, and you have the good fortune of being able to help them. And then the choice is yours. And if you choose to do the right thing, you're very fortunate. And if you didn't choose the right thing, that's sad. That's an opportunity missed. But success is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It wasn't because you were wise that you were in that position. It wasn't because you were talented or beautiful or hardworking you were in that position. You had the good fortune to be in that position. You were gifted to be in that position. And then you have the freedom to act. So Kasha HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yegagal Yodei Mitzvah, says the Sha'ar HaBitachon, Yachshev Beliboy, then the person must think to himself. Literally, Yachshev Beliboy means think in his heart. That's what it means. The way he translates it here, he said he should consider. Like people say, consider this, think about this, contemplate this, sleep over this. It's Yachshev Beliboy. We talked about this a number of episodes ago. Whenever it's Yachshev Beliboy, it's to think about it in a way that touches you, in a way that's you take this personally, not objectively, not academically, but emotionally. You get emotionally involved in thinking about this. You personalize this. So Yachshev Beliboy, you need to think to yourself. Meaning this has to be the attitude, this has to be the perspective that you adopt, the way you view things. Ki hu toiva me'es habayra. That this is a favor. This is a kindness. The word tova literally means tov is good. But euphemistically, people say, Oi, do me a toiva, which literally would translate as, do me a favor. Do me a good thing, a kindness. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a person the opportunity, he should think to himself that it's a toiva, that it's a kindness. Me'es habayre, from the Creator, Yisala, may be exalted. Sheyetiv ba a love, that he gave, hetiv ba a love, he gave you this kindness. He made things good for you. He gave you the benefit now that you are able to do this thing. The fact that you're positioned and able to do this mitzvah is a gift from on high. So you have the good fortune of being in a time and in a place where you can come to shul, where you can daven together with others, where you can perform mitzvahs, where kosher food's available, and the list goes on. We have many opportunities that other people didn't have. It's because we're smarter, because we're better. Half the family got out before the Iron Curtain went down, half the family didn't get out. Half the family was living in Canada, the United States, or Western Europe in freedom, able to enjoy and exercise their rights in a positive way and live a life filled with Yiddishkeit. And the other half of the family was languishing under communist oppression, in squalor and poverty and in all kinds of under threats and intimidation, where Yiddishkeit is outlawed. So what? Oh, I'm really glad that my Zedi was smart. He got out. He was smart. Says he was smart. He was smart. He got out in the first train. The second train they caught. He was smart. No, we're blessed. We're blessed. We're Baruch Hashem blessed. By the way, when you're blessed, Hashem has expectations of you. Less is expected of the person who is in the impossible situation, and more is expected of the person who is in the possible situation. We're expected to serve Hashem to the best of our ability. And it's a gift. Not a burden, a gift. It's a wonderful thing when we're able to serve Hashem. So I want to stop you right here. This whole introduction is about a person doing a mitzvah in public, and it's more difficult to have pure intentions, so he has to remind himself. That's not what Rabbeinu Bachaya says. He says, Kashi galgal habeira al yodei mitzvah. Now, in the whole fifth part, because he divides it into 6 parts, in the whole fifth part, it's about mitzvahs. And the key to understanding how mitzvahs works is that here we have Bechira, here we have the freedom to choose. So if Bitachon gets supplanted for Bechira, where you're supposed to choose right, and say, well, choose? I leave it in God's hands. I'll make a half-hearted effort. I'm not going to really try to do a mitzvah because I don't have to. Because Hashem, if Hashem wants the mitzvah to happen, it'll happen anyway. That's actually incorrect. Yogaito umatzasa, the Gemara says, and even though the Gemara in Megillah is talking about the concept of Talmud Torah, Chassidus tells us very clearly that the concept of Yogaito umatzasa, that the success only comes commensurate to the efforts invested, is a broad statement. Not only about learning Torah, but about all of Yiddishkeit. About all of religious and spiritual and moral and ethical conduct and endeavor. Yogaita, you made the effort, then you could say Matzasa. You could say, I succeeded. So if a person uses Bitachon to minimize or diminish the amount of effort that he's able to invest, that's not okay. That's a cop-out. Hashem gave you responsibility and you said, you know what, God? I trust you. I'll give it back to you. What do you mean? Hashem gave it to you. He trusted you. He didn't tell you to trust him. He trusted you. Say thank you. And now run with it and do the best you can. So it doesn't say here that he's talking about a specific mitzvah. And this episode, which I'm calling the Soul of Success, really is what concludes all mitzvah endeavor. And the elucidator of this translation also directs your attention to the Hayom Yom for the 8th day of Cheshvan, which we're going to talk about. I'll talk about the 7th day and the 8th day, actually. And over there, that Hayom Yom is all about mitzvot. How Chassidus teaches us to view a mitzvah. Not a mitzvah that you have to do in public and maybe it's no, mitzvah. So I actually I can't see it that way. I don't think Rabbeinu Bachaya here is referring only to the previous instance, where we have not only the freedom to choose, but we have multiple moving pieces at the same time, which makes it that much more difficult. I once heard a silly little joke, but it has a point, that the mechanic was complaining to his cardiologist. He says, look at you. He said, you perform open heart surgery, and look what you get paid. He says, thousands of dollars for a day of work. He said, I did open heart surgery on your car. And what am I getting paid? He says, I barely make a few $100s. So the surgeon said, yeah, I'd like to see you fix the transmission while you're driving on the highway. He said, then you'll understand what open heart surgery is. Right? You can't like say to the person, okay, we're going to put you out, you'll be dead for a couple of hours, we'll bring you back. It doesn't work that way. So this is an enormously difficult thing where I have to exercise Bechira, but there's moving pieces. There's a whole bunch of other people who have exercised Bechira. Like I gave the example 2 episodes ago, I have to give a sermon or I have to give a class, and I'm putting people to sleep all over the place. Well, it's their choice to sleep. Well, it's their choice to sleep, but was I making it as interesting as it could? And maybe I could have worked a little harder. So if I did my best, I say, oh, I did my best. I tried as hard as I could to be as dynamic and interesting as I could. And if they fell asleep, what are you going to do? But if I didn't put the effort in, and I'm giving a half-hearted kind of sermon, and that's the reason they're all sleeping, I can't say, hey, I did my part. No, you didn't. They're sleeping. They chose to sleep. You put them to sleep.
Each player has their own rule.
Each player has their own rule. That's why I said it's like the open heart surgery. There's a lot of moving pieces here. That's why it's extremely nuanced and difficult to apply Bitachon, as we learned about in the previous episodes.
But if someone who's listening to a shiur has the opportunity to learn the benefit and chooses for whatever reason, whether there was exhaustion, they didn't prepare during the day, they didn't allow to rest so they could participate and enjoy it, that
can't be the Maggid shiur's fault. It can't be right. So, but if the Maggid shiur, if the one giving the shiur, really tried his best with whatever was available to him as best as he or she could, then he or she says, I did my part, and the people will make their choices. But if the Maggid shiur didn't do his part, he wasn't working as hard as he could and should, and that's the reason they're falling asleep, then it's not so punishment.
I'm sure we can do more.
Okay, so we have to keep trying. You know the joke they tell? This rabbi comes to heaven at the same time as a Neged bus driver. And he was a chief rabbi of a city in Israel. He thought he was going to get all kinds of honor. And he's waiting online. And the bus driver comes and they rush him straight to the front. And he's afforded so much honor and so much glory. And the rabbi says, I don't understand. I was the rabbi. I was just a bus driver. And the Malach said to him, when you would give a sermon, everybody slept. When he would drive his bus, everybody used to daven. Again, silly joke, but it brings out a point. Sometimes humor brings out a point. Okay, so that's why, I mean, if you're going to look at this as a mitzvah opportunity, this has to be a broad, overarching statement. So even though the Pas Lechem does speak about Shemegalgal le'ezo adam tova, okay, the Pas Lechem does say that, but I don't think you have to necessarily follow the Pas Lechem. And as I said, I would take exception to this little note. I think actually that it seems to me that the proper way to learn Pshat here is that this applies to all mitzvahs. Everything we talked about with mitzvah observance, everything we talked about with this Bechira involved. In the Art Scroll version, they actually say a final note regarding of how a person should view his fulfillment of mitzvahs. I think that's correct. I think this is a final note. This is the final note. How do you view mitzvah success? So we talked about material success. Mitzvah success. Why is that different? Well, very simple. Because mitzvah success has a lot to do with your efforts. In fact, it has everything to do with your efforts. Yagaita, umatzasa. You toiled and worked hard. Tamen, that's believable. And otherwise it isn't. And if you think you succeeded, how do you know what success is? In Yiddishkeit, how do you know what success is? How do you quantify success in Yiddishkeit? A person who has a simple mind and pushes himself to learn Torah beyond what is natural or easy is a tremendous success. And a person who is an absolute genius, who has an open mind, who could learn so easily, but instead learns, he's ahead of everybody else. But he's in a race with himself, not anybody else. He's going to only be compared to who he could have been, not to who anybody else was. So if you didn't make the effort, You think you're successful because your metrics you're using are how somebody else succeeded. They learned 10 pages, I learned 20 pages. I must be a success. No, they learned 10 pages and they couldn't even learn 9 pages. They're a success. You learned 20 pages, you could have learned 30. You're a failure. You've fallen short. So when Hashem causes the mitzvah to be performed, Hashem gives you this opportunity to do a mitzvah, we say that a person has to look at it, has to view it, that he received a gift from Hashem. This is a kindness that Hashem did to him. It's a toiva. It's a favor. Me'es habeirei yizala shehetiv ba'ilav. Hashem was kind to him through the performance of this mitzvah. Okay, very nice. Va'al yismach. Now here, Rabbeinu Bachaya gets a lot more intense. Not only does he say you should view a mitzvah achievement as a favor, as a gift, as an opportunity, as something special. No, not only that. He says, Al yismach. You shouldn't rejoice. And here is a very interesting word that can be pronounced in multiple ways. And in Hebrew, the same exact word, spelled the same exact way, pronounced differently, can have a word of difference. A world, it can be past, it can be present, it can be future, it can be causative, it can be an action taken, a direct action taken. So the Neder BaKodesh does a very interesting thing here. He vowelizes this word. He says the shin should have a patach, and the bet should have a tseire. And that would be read as bishabeach. That's not the natural way to read this word. Al yismach bishabeach oto bnei odom oleho. A person should not rejoice when others are praising or adulating over what you did. As the Neder BaKodesh says, Hu yaseh es shaloi. You do your thing. You do what you are supposed to do. And af b'farhesya, if it's going to be public, and maybe somebody will say something complimentary, and maybe they won't, doesn't make a difference. And he says, it doesn't mean, as we learned previously, you have to hide things. So at this point, I think Rabbeinu Bachaya is addressing what he immediately spoke about, not before. I think it's at this point, the Neder BaKodesh, at this point he says, we had this discussion, I want to remain anonymous. But if I remain anonymous, it's going to detract or diminish from the efforts I'm supposed to make. I'm not going to be making as well an effort. So we learned, Rabbeinu Bachaya said, anonymity is nice. It's a good thing to aspire to. But it doesn't make or break what's expected of you. And because it's not a deal breaker, if people are going to know, so they'll know. I have to do what I have to do. What if they'll honor me for it? So they'll honor me. What if they'll demote me for it? Who are they to demote? It's not, honor is not theirs and demotion is not theirs. Neither is theirs. They're not going to honor or dishonor. It's irrelevant. If he can't conceal it, and he might be thanked for it, sometimes you should be thanked. You did a kindness, you did something charitable, people are going to thank you. That's fine. Don't rejoice over that. I got to tell you, this is like an enormously difficult thing Rabbeinu Bachaya has just asked us to do. It is totally unnatural for a person not to, quote, find joy or delight or pleasure in a compliment where people appreciate. Everybody wants to be appreciated. It's human nature to want to be appreciated. So at this point, I'm like asking myself, seriously? Did Rabbeinu Bachaya did he really just say that? Like, that doesn't even seem reasonable. Did he just say that it doesn't matter whether you worked hard or didn't work hard? You shouldn't necessarily look to be appreciated? And it doesn't matter if they will or won't? Not only that, al yismach. It's interesting, how do you translate the words al yismach? So in the Kiyat translation, they just use it, he should not rejoice. I don't know if this is not about rejoicing. It's the Art Scroll, they say you shouldn't delight. And again, I only have 3 English translations here, and they're all different. So what does it mean to rejoice, to laugh? What really is the translation? I don't think this is about the happiness or not. What makes you feel good? Maybe it is about happiness. Like, what makes you happy? If you did a good job.
How can you turn that off?
How can you turn that off? It doesn't seem reasonable. Like, this is like a tzaddik he's talking about. How does a regular person supposed to do this? And not only that, not only he shouldn't delight in the compliment and the thank you, he shouldn't want that honor, ba'avura. He shouldn't want the honor for it. Shouldn't want people should want to honor him. He shouldn't want it. They'll honor him. It's like, doesn't make a difference. Why? What's so bad? What's so bad about feeling good about yourself? What's a mitzvah to feel bad about yourself? What's wrong with that? So Rabbeinu Bachaya says, because this will bring you to a sense of arrogance and conceit, and you become prideful. And in doing so, now you're going to lose the purity of your heart. You did this in a heartfelt way, and you're going to lose that. Furthermore, you are going to ruin the action you just did. You're going to spoil things. You're going to spoil your reward. You were supposed to get rewarded. Hashem rewards for. You're going to spoil. You're going to ruin everything. Now, this is like, wow. Did he really just say this? And very interestingly, he stops right here, and he tells us that ani osid levarze b'sha'ar. I'm going to explain it in its proper gate. And it's not even so simple which gate this is. So in the Neder Bar-Kodesh, he says, which gate this is? That's Sha'ar Yichud HaMaisa. That's the gate, the 5th gate, which is called the gate of wholehearted devotion. And the Pas Lechem says, no, it's not the 5th gate. He's referring to the 6th gate, which is Sha'ar HaKniyah, the gate of humility. So it's not even clear what exactly he means. I mean, the commentaries don't even know what he means. It's such an enormous ask, and I'm trying to learn this. I don't know what's going on over here.
So you perform a mitzvah.
You perform a mitzvah, like you did a mitzvah. You're going to lose your reward because you felt good about this. Seriously?
If someone appreciates your effort, and they say thank you, and for a second you feel good.
Terrible.
So do you deflect to Hashem right away? Is that the way out? Like, you have feelings.
So this is what we're talking about.
You thank Hashem for allowing it to happen.
Yeah, and you're thanking Hashem for the privilege.
Instead of dwelling on
your achievement.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So it says, instead of looking at I did it, say thank you Hashem for giving me the privilege.
Okay.
Somebody thanks you, say thank me, Baruch Hashem. I'm so grateful I had the opportunity. I'm so happy Hashem gave me the ability to help you. So, whilst they're thanking you, and you have to be gracious, you're thanking Hashem. That's what you're doing. You know, there's a beautiful story that's told about the Alter Rebbe. I for sure shared this story before. He was once traveling, and he was traveling anonymously. He didn't present his credentials when he came. Hi, I'm the Alter Rebbe. I'm the leader of the Chabad Hasidim. But it was people with him. And he was the Rebbe, and they were treating him like a Rebbe. And this very clever fellow realized that the Alter Rebbe is no ordinary person. Now, this guy was no ordinary person either. He was a person who excelled at the mitzvah of hospitality, of achnasat orchim. So much so that he and his wife built an addition to their home, like a Motel 6. And anybody who would come to town, they would vie for the honor of hosting the people for as long as these people wanted. And they'd feed them, and they give them a shelter, and they try to give them, if they were destitute or needy people, try to help them a little as they go on their journey. I didn't ask for a penny. People wanted to pay, so give to tzedakah. I make a living, I'm able to do this. And Alter Rebbe ends up staying in this Motel 6. Non-for-profit Motel 6. And he noticed Alter Rebbe is like an unusual person. He kind of picked up on that. So he came over to the Alter Rebbe and he said, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question. Alter Rebbe was okay. He said, David HaMelech in Tehillim says, Zereya tzedakah Schar emes. If you sow tzedakah, righteousness, what the world calls charity, so schar, the reward, is truth. And the man said, I'm doing this for years. And you know, I still have like half an ear kind of bent. Maybe, just to listen to a compliment. I don't ask people to say thank you. I don't ask for anything, but it's still nice to hear like, wow, look at this. That's hospitality. Amazing. And the man said, he felt very bad. He said, I'm doing so much tzedakah. He says, nobody could say I'm not a zereh tzedakahs. Where's the emet? Where's the emet? My reward is supposed to be emet, that I shouldn't be looking for any kind of compliment or even thank you or appreciation. Now, there are many stories about the Alter Rebbe's contemplation. He would fall into like a meditative state. And he would like lose his bearings almost, being like in a different world. So the story goes that the Alter Rebbe began to think very deeply until such time that he had like fell against the doorpost, as the expression goes, and he was lost in this deep contemplation. And then he opened his eyes, and he said a few words in Yiddish. He said to the man 3 words. He said, the oni is zat. 4 words. The oni is zat. The poor person is sated. The poor person is sated. And he said, und das is der emes. And that's the truth. In other words, when you do a mitzvah, invariably, the mitzvah is about you. How well did you do the mitzvah? How sincere were you? How committed were you? How devoted were you? Were you filled with a sense of love for Hashem? And did you cherish the opportunity? Or maybe you didn't do the mitzvah so mindfully. Maybe you didn't do it with the proper fervor or passion, with a sense of awe and respect and appreciation to Hashem. Maybe you didn't do it that way. But he says there's one mitzvah where you actually don't matter. And that's the mitzvah of tzedakah. Like the Rambam, in his 8 levels of tzedakah, says the highest level of tzedakah is not when you give until it hurts. That's a non-Jewish idea. What's the highest level of tzedakah? When you give in a way that doesn't rob the recipient of his or her dignity. And the way the recipient isn't robbed of dignity is when the recipient doesn't know who they got from, and the recipient knows that the benefactor doesn't know who they are either. Because even if you don't know who you got from, but you know somebody's looking at you funny, you know you're indebted to somebody. Here the person says, I'm not indebted to anybody, I'm indebted to Hashem. And the Rambam says that in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, it was a special fund where pious people would give anonymously and appropriate people would be taken care of, all quietly. And the people who received knew that nobody knew who they were helping. And the people that helped knew that the recipient had no idea who they were. And it was all under the radar. And that's a beautiful thing. And the Alter Rebbe said to this man, that's the truth. The truth is that tzedakah is not about you, it's about the recipient. And if the ani feels good, if the poor person is sated, that's the truth. Can't argue with the truth. The truth is he was hungry. That was true. The truth is now he's full. He's satiated. Okay, that's the truth. But you see that, that was the Alter Rebbe's answer about that particular mitzvah. But it's human nature to want to be appreciated. We get frustrated when not appreciated. Nobody wants to be disrespected. And actually there's nothing wrong with that. There's a beautiful commentary from the Maharal of Prague on the Rashi in the beginning of Parshat Yitro. So, in the beginning of the Parsha, Yitro sends a message to Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is like a whole discussion how he sent the message. According to some opinions, he sent advanced messengers. According to another opinion, he sent homing pigeons. And according to a third opinion, he shot an arrow and he wrapped a parchment around the arrow. And he said, I, Yitro, am coming. And your wife, Tzipporah, is coming. And your children are coming. So the question is, why do we need to know this? I, Yitro, am coming. And Tzipporah is coming. And Gershom and Eliezer. So Rashi tells us, quoting our sages, that Yitro said, I expect you to come and greet me. And if you won't come and greet me, at least come and honor your wife. At least honor your wife. And if you're not going to honor your wife, at least be a decent father and show a little love for your children. Show your children that you care about them. And of course, Moshe Rabbeinu came out. So the Maharal of Prague asks a tremendous question. He says, Yitro was a tzaddik. He's a tzaddik. He's a righteous person. How can a righteous person demand honor? We know that honor is a davar meguna b'yeser. It's considered to be a repugnant thing. A person who seeks honor is a paradigm of repugnancy in Torah literature. A person who demands honor. Honor me. It's anathema. Certainly for a tzaddik. So if it's such a bad thing, how could Yisro do it? The Maharal says an amazing thing. He says that a human being doesn't want to be disrespected. Even tzaddikim, he says. They want to be treated decently. Everybody wants to be treated respectfully. It's not called honor. It's not called roidef achar hakavod. You want to be treated respectfully. It's normal. People want to be treated respectfully. They should be treated respectfully. In the Western world, they would say, it's our right. In Torah, we say, it's my obligation. It's my obligation to treat somebody with respect. Everybody. Every human being is deserving of respect. Not only a human being is deserving of respect, human remains are deserving of respect. Because a human being has the image of Hashem. And we have to be respectful. And that's what Yisro is asking for. I mean, this is natural. So he doesn't say here you should hate the honor. You should, Rabbeinu Bachaya doesn't say you should hate it. When they give you a compliment, you should vomit. Run away from it. He doesn't say that. He says, al yismach. Al yismach. Let that not proverbially light your candle. Let that not excite you, fire you up, make you filled with joy. That shouldn't be your source of joy. Every one of us has things that make us happy. What makes you happy? It's a good question sometimes to ask yourself, what makes me happy? Does more money make me happy? Does more money make anybody happy, really? Probably not. Money is just a means. So if a person has money, then they can use the money for something. Probably to buy happiness, because people like to be happy. So what makes you happy? Does food make you happy? So you're basically a glorified ox. The ox is happy when he finds straw, and you're happy when you find a glorified salad. Okay, fine. So you're a fancier ox. Is that all we are? That's the sum total of... So that's a very crass kind of... Is that all happiness is about? A little bit of food, a little bit of serotonin release because you got some libido, some sensual pleasure. What makes people happy? Family makes people happy. Relationship makes people happy. Doing something kind for somebody else makes you really happy. Feeling that you've made a contribution, that you had the privilege to do something great, it makes you happy. Everybody thinks that they'll be happy when they get stuff. And they are for about 2 minutes. Then they want more stuff. Then they have too much stuff. So they're unhappy because they have too much stuff, but they were happy because they got the stuff. So they have to buy the stuff to be happy, and then they have to get rid of the stuff because they're unhappy with too much stuff. And that's the story of life, or as it shouldn't be. But really, what gives us joy more than anything else is not what we get, but what we give. When we're able to give something to somebody else that they truly needed, that they value, it is the single most edifying and wonderful feeling possible. I was speaking to, many years ago, then she was a young woman, and she told me that she was in university, and she had everything. She was attractive, and she had boyfriends, and she had money, and she had food, and she had clothing, and all. She had everything. She was miserable. She was profoundly unhappy. And then Chabad was on campus, and they met her. She met them. She met the Rebbitzin. So they're coming to a Friday night dinner. And a few years later, she's observant. She's living in Israel. And she's got 2 babies. And one morning, she's thinking to herself, I don't have money. I don't have clothes. I got 2 crying babies. I'm kind of happy. Why am I happy? Like, how come I wasn't happy then? How come I am happy now? And she said to me, you know what I realized? I realized because then I didn't feel important or needed. And now I was needed. My husband needed me. My babies needed me. I was needed. So I feel happy. Now, is it nicer to have a couple of extra shekels in the pocket? Of course it is. Nobody likes poverty. Nobody likes the squeeze. Nobody likes the pressure. Nobody likes to worry or be anxious. But actually, if you learn Sha'ar HaBitachon, you don't have to be anxious or worried. You can get rid of all that. But that takes a lot of effort. So of course, nobody likes a difficult situation. But what's the happiest thing for a person? When a person is living a productive, meaningful life in which they make contributions to others. It's the most wonderful kind of life to live. The greatest bracha. So what makes you happy? That's what Rabbeinu Bachaya speaks about here. He doesn't say run away, he doesn't say get angry, he doesn't say slam the doors, he says al yismach. Al yismach. And then he says further, al yachpoitz. The word yachpoitz comes from the word chefetz. In Hebrew there's a word called rotzen. Rotzen means to want. But I want to do a lot of things. And a lot of the things I want, I don't really want those things. I want those things because those things lead me to something else. A person will be racing through traffic and said, what do you want? I said, I want to get to my appointment on time. Do you really want to get to your appointment on time? So, well, no, but I want to make a living and I need to get my appointment on time to make a living, or that's what I think. I'm imagining. So I want to want to want. There's a lot of wants on the road. I'm getting to where I want to be. Chefetz is the thing I actually really want. So what do you really want? What are you really looking for? In other words, let me make it simple. If you have an opportunity to do a really big mitzvah, but you're not going to get any fanfare for it. In fact, you're not even going to be appreciated, but you're making a real difference. Or you can do something, mostly window dressing. You're not really making a difference, but you can get lots of honor for it. What would you choose? And that's a question we have to ask ourselves. What would we choose? Which would we prefer?
Number one.
Would we? I'd like to think we want, I hope we want number one. I'd like to think we want number one. I think most people would like to think they want number one. I don't know. That's the kind of question you have to ask yourself, between you and Hashem. These are the kind of things that can keep you up at night. This is real avodas Hashem. How am I doing in my service to Hashem? What do I really want? What is my chefetz? Rabbeinu Bachaya doesn't say, don't take a compliment. He doesn't say, be disrespected. He doesn't say that. And there was a certain school of thought that was found primarily in what we would call, I guess, the Ashkenaz Hasidic movement, the Hasidic Ashkenaz, which believed they lived in the German Rhineland in the 12th and 13th century, and they were a small group of people, but they had tremendous influence. And they actually believed that in order to obtain atonement for Hashem, a person had to self-morticate. He had to experience self-mortification. And he had to harm himself and hurt himself and torture himself. So whether it was fasting and starving yourself and shaming yourself and other acts, public acts of humiliation, and many people adopted this custom, right? And one of the things that the Baal Shem Tov came to dismantle was that approach. He said, don't break the body. The body's not your enemy. You think it's your enemy. It looks like your enemy. Don't break him. The body is just a donkey. That's all he is. You have to harness him. Baal Shem Tov famously teaches, Brotan hayom yom ki sira chamoir. You see the donkey and it's soinacha. You think he hates you. This is like a mystical interpretation on that mitzvah of helping somebody to unload and load his donkey. And the Baal Shem Tov says, using the Maharal's terminology, the chamor, the donkey is chomer. It's a euphemism for materiality. Don't think materiality is your enemy. You don't have to suffer. There's no glory in pain and mortification. You have to help the body. You get a good night's sleep. Eat a square meal. Who says it has to be all the things that are sweetest and most delicious? Eat what's more healthy. How many people would choose the healthier dish over the tastier dish? Tough call, huh? Everybody wants dessert, right? So little children, as little children. But when you get a little older, you should have a little seichel, no? the junk food, it makes you feel good for about 5 seconds, and you feel miserable inside. And the healthy food never gives you that high, that sugar high, but you feel kind of satisfied, right? So this is like a metaphor for life. So there were those who believed in that kind of, these harsh methods of penance. And it's very important to note that none of that is an organic development from the Gemara. Our sages, our Chazal didn't talk about that. There's no mention in the Gemara of self-mortification. Even the writings of the Gaonim, which are the completion of the Talmud, we don't find any such mentions. It's only in the medieval ages that it kind of shows up. And the Baal Shem Tov rejected that. He doesn't say, Rabbeinu Bachaya never says for a minute, you should be miserable about this. He says, al yismach. That's not where your joy comes from. It's nice. It's nice. It's nice to be respected. It's nice to be appreciated. Of course a person wants to be appreciated. But al yismach. What does your joy come from? Your joy comes from what you actually did, what you had the privilege to be part of. What's your chayfetz? And he says, because if not, if that's where your joy comes from, if that's what you're really looking for, he says it'll bring you to arrogance and pridefulness. And then your success loses soul. There is no soul in that success. There's self in that success. It's all about self-promotion. We should look for soul. The soul of success is when a person is able to appreciate that it's a gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so I kind of I calm myself down a little. Okay, I figured this out a little, that the language is not so hard. It's not as daunting. But and I understand that if a person finds his joy and that's what he really wants, it's all about how many times they'll compliment me and how great I'll be, that you're on very, very thin ice. But what's the meaning of Yafsid Libe v'kavanasa? You lose the heart, you lose, but you did a mitzvah. You had intention for Hashem. You lose it? Why do you lose it? And even worse, he said, Yafsid Maaseyu. You did something good, you're going to lose it. You spoil what you did. The ani yazat, the poor person is full. Why did I lose it? It's very hard to understand. Why did I lose it because of that? You lose your schar? What do you mean? The mitzvah was done. The Gemara says God does not withhold reward from any creature. The dogs didn't bark when we left Mitzrayim. Until this day, they are fed non-kosher meat. Good cuts of meat that aren't kosher. L'kelev tashlicha noiseh, the Torah says. Why? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu remembers that the ancestors of the dogs didn't bark when we left Mitzrayim. So I did a mitzvah, but I had a little bit, too much in the adulation. I was too excited about the adulation. I enjoyed the fame and the compliments and the too much. I lose my mitzvah because of this? I spoil my mitzvah? I don't get rewarded now? What does that even mean? That's my first question. It's just a general question. I don't understand. The Torah has to make reasonable demands of us. This seems to be an inordinate, unreasonable demand. Furthermore, what's even more challenging, more difficult is, a mitzvah is a mitzvah. How do you ruin a mitzvah? How do you spoil a mitzvah? And lastly, what in heaven does this have to do with trust in Hashem? And Rabbeinu Bachaya himself says, I'm going to tell you more details in another gate, and we don't even know which gate that is. Is it the gate of wholehearted devotion, or is it the gate of humility? Okay, the Chavas Halavavos is a very important book that has different chapters. When you get to humility, you talk about humility. You get to wholehearted devotion, he'll say, that's not called wholehearted devotion. Fine. Okay, it's not wholehearted devotion. But it's not Bitachon? It's not trust in Hashem? Why is it not trust in Hashem? So then I kind of directed my attention to the Hayom Yom. And the Hayom Yom of the 7th of Cheshvan is basically about Brit Milah. It's about Brit Milah. It matches up with Parshat Lech Lecha. It's about Brit Milah. Avraham Avinu's Brit Milah. And the the essence of our Brit Milah is Brito Shel Avram Avinu, even though we do the Brit because Hashem commanded us at Har Sinai, but the essence of the Brit is the Brit of Avram. So it says that in the beginning, before the Torah was given, things were very different than the way they are today. So today, the first thing that happens is the actual bris, it says. Hasar Hasar Lis Haguf. The baby boy is 8 days old. He has no clue of what's happening, and he got a bris. What happens after? Then there's what we call the proverbial circumcision of the tongue. It's a euphemism. It's not a circumcision. It's a metaphor. It means not to use speech in a dishonest and deceitful way. It means not to speak in a disparaging way. It means not to engage in slander, in gossip, not to speak lashon hara and sheker. That's what it means. And then in a positive way, to use your powers of speech to uplift, to inspire, to comfort, to share words of Torah, and to pray to Hashem. That's what you use your speech for. And then eventually, hopefully, not only will you use your speech properly, but eventually you'll actually remove the proverbial orla, the cover of the heart, and you'll feel a sense of love for Hashem. And that's something we kind of work on our whole life. So first action, then speech, and finally what we call consciousness or thought. By Avraham Avinu was the other way around. By Avraham Avinu, the first thing he did was achieve higher consciousness. From the age of 3, Avraham Avinu starts to recognize Hashem. Like the Rambam says, till 48 he worked on developing his special theory of monotheism. And then when he finishes that, he begins to speak. And he tells everybody who will listen. And he teaches everybody. And he's using his tongue. He doesn't speak lies, doesn't speak deceitful. He speaks only truth, and he speaks words of inspiration. And tells everybody about God. And then at 99 years old, he has a bris milah in a bodily sense too. So it's the opposite approach. And this is an excerpt of a private notes that the Rebbe wrote from something that the previous Rebbe said when the previous Rebbe was honored with being the Sandik at a bris. And the Rebbe, when he was Sandik at a bris, he shared this. He shared these teachings. And the Rebbe shared over there also that the Frierdiker Rebbe said that, he goes further, he said. He said there was a story that there was a grandson born to the Lubavitcher Rebbe of the day, our Rebbe's namesake, known as the Tzemach Tzedek, talking like 1850s, something like that. And the question was, who should be the mohel? There were 2 mohelim. One mohel was a very good mohel. He was very effective. He knew how to do a good job. But he wasn't capable of any kind of mystical, Kabbalistic intentions. And the other mohel was a really pious, deep, profound person. But he wasn't necessarily such a good mohel. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, take the first one. Hire the first mohel. So they said, why? So he said, because asiya le'ela, action is most important. You gotta cut straight. You gotta get the job done. And he said, asiya le'ela u'le'ela. Action is loftier, it goes beyond intentions. Beyond intentions. And he said, it's such a le'ela that we don't have to have any specific addresses, so to speak, spiritual addresses of Kavanas HaArizal or whatever. He's doing the job. He's doing a mitzvah. That's good enough. There's a similar story with sounding of the shofar, of who to take as the one to sound the shofar. And Bleitzcher Berditchever said, the one who knows how to blow the shofar. The one who knows how to do it according to halacha right. Not the deep, profound person. So there's an emphasis on action. And then the next Hayom Yom talks about how we view, Hayom Yom of Ches Cheshvan, how we view mitzvahs from a perspective of Hasidic illumination. And according to Chabad Hasidus, the most important thing to look at a mitzvah is to get down to its essence, which is tzavtzov v'chibur, which is connection. The mitzvah is a connection with Hashem. And there's a metaphor that's given of a simple person who has no connection to this very profound, deep person, but the profound, deep person asked the simple person for a little favor. To get pass me the glass of water when he was thirsty. Or give me a favor, I need a tissue. And he did him a favor. And because he did him a favor, all of a sudden they have a link now. They forged a relationship. You're the guy who gave me the tissue. You're the person who passed the water. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the person understands or doesn't understand. The most important thing is a request was made and it was fulfilled. Hashem makes himself needy. Hashem says, I want you to do this for me. You do understand, you don't understand. You realize the gap and the distance between a human being and the creator of heaven and earth. Even if you don't realize it. The main thing is, you have to know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked us, and we responded. HaKadosh Baruch Hu asked us to do a mitzvah, we did the mitzvah. So the most important part of a mitzvah is doing what Hashem wants. So this person who did a mitzvah and did what Hashem wants, he's also enjoying the limelight. He loses his reward? He ruins the mitzvah? Why did he ruin the mitzvah? Doesn't seem to make any sense. So this is my suggestion. When I was trying to figure this out, so a thought came to me. The Alter Rebbe, in the third section of Tanya, wrote what's called Igeres HaTshuva, the letter of Tshuva. And the first thing he does is, he creates a definition of tshuva. What is tshuva? Halachically speaking, what is tshuva? And the first thing he talks about is atonement. What is atonement? He talks about how a person achieves atonement. How do you get Hashem to forgive you? And he goes through the details of how you get Hashem to forgive you. And then, after the Alter Rebbe discusses how you get Hashem to forgive you, he defines what is the mitzvah of tshuva. It's a mitzvah in the Torah. So what is the mitzvah? Define the mitzvah. I can define matzah for you. I know what matzah means. Define tshuva. Remorse. What kind of remorse? What does that mean? Inspiration. What does it mean? He defines tshuva. And then in the third part of the first chapter, the Alter Rebbe defines or talks about the role of fasting and suffering. And he says a lot of people were taken with this idea that came out of the Rhineland in the 12th and 13th century, that suffering and self-mortification was the ticket, that was the key to heaven. And they got all caught up with it. And the Alter Rebbe says it is not. It's not. And he says it's at best the concept of the mortification, and the fasting plays not even a secondary, a tertiary role in tshuva. It's a distant third. It's not the main thing. So what is the role of fasting? Why do we have expressions of fasting? So in the second chapter, the Alter Rebbe says it's not actually about atonement. In the first chapter, he talked about the connection between fasting and between tshuva. And he argued that fasting has no role in the actual mitzvah of tshuva. It has a distant connection. It's an assist. But then the Alter Rebbe says that there is a worthy aspect of fasting. And that has a closer, even a secondary kind of role, very close to tshuva. And the Alter Rebbe here at this point starts speaking about where the atonement is complete. However, after the atonement, there's still something which can be accomplished. So atonement means that you're totally free of any pending punishment. No punishment. You're free. But even when a soul has been atoned and it's cleansed, the history of the inappropriateness can still tarnish your relationship with Hashem. So the question is, how do you undo that damage? In other words, in the Alter Rebbe's words in Tanya, he says, if you talk about kapara and mechila sa'aven, if you talk about atonement, if you talk about Hashem forgivement, which means shenimchale legamri, he is forgiven and atoned masha'aver al mitzvah samelech, what he did against Hashem. And it's k'sha'asa tshuva shleima, when he does complete, perfect tshuva. A maskirin le'davar v'chatzi davar. What's the definition? Nothing will be mentioned on the day of judgment. You pass judgment. There's no punishment, not in this world, not in the other world. You're exempt. Nomi says, that your relationship should be restored. Restoration of relationship, that's another story. For restoration of relationship, you should be merutza, v'chaviv l'fanav yizbarech. You should now be as desired, so to speak, by Hashem as you were before. That's different. That's different. For that, you have to bring special satisfaction on high. You have to bring special nachas. And that's the idea of a korban, of a special gift. And that's the concept. That's where fasting comes in. Right? So basically, it's simply stated, the function of fasting as a part of the process of atonement is certainly not endemic to the concept of atonement. Alter Rebbe said that there are times when a person, if there's going to be any kind of atonement that comes through suffering, has to be heaven-sent suffering. But what if a person is afraid that maybe the heaven-sent suffering, Hashem isn't beating him up enough? He's not pounding him hard enough, for whatever reason. He didn't deserve a pounding. Or he wants to expedite this process. But in the second chapter of Igeres HaTshuva, the Alter Rebbe speaks about the concept in a very different way. He says, it's not about mortification, it's about a korban. It's about like a gift. It's about an offering to Hashem. So atonement affects the soul's status in what we're going to call in the terms of credits and debts. His status is returned. You know, it says when a person is guilty, is convicted of a crime in Torah, he has to get lashes. And then it says, Torah calls him achicha. V'nikla achicha le'enecha. Your brother will be degraded in your eyes. And our sages explain, in the Gemara Makkos, on page 23, the sages explain, that once he's been nikla, that once he's been disgraced and he had the beating, he's already achicha. His status is restored. He is fully restored. He's on par with everybody else. He's a brother. So when a person does tshuva, his transgressions are not going to be mentioned. No mention of transgressions. He's clean. So he doesn't become a tzaddik, but his debt is cleared. But this is not about what we would call rectification or compensation for what was caused. It just means you won't be held accountable. The debt is forgiven. So simply stated, let's say you declare bankruptcy. The credit card will fulfill your debt, release you from debt. You won't have to pay anything. You also can't get another credit card. So you have no trust. You're not going to be held accountable, but you also have no trust from anybody. And the question is, how do I create this sense of trust from Hashem? How do I rebuild the relationship? And the relationship doesn't just automatically go back to the way it was. People can offend each other sometimes. And they ask forgiveness. And you say, I forgive you. And it can be sincere, but I don't look at you the same way. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's very hard for people to be able to get back to where they were. And that requires much, much more than just contrition and a sincere plea for forgiveness. That requires a tremendous amount of effort. So that's what happens in the second chapter of Tanya. I was thinking like this. We learned in the beginning of the Sha'ar HaBitachon that if a person has pure Bitachon in Hashem, it actually brings you blessings. A person can be in a bad situation. If I'm not fazed by what's coming my way, and I am calm and cool and collected, not because somebody promised to bail me out, not because I got the best doctor that money can buy who's going to be available for me. I'm calm, I'm cool, I'm collected because I trust in Hashem. If you trust in Hashem like that, said Rabbeinu Bachaya, and the same idea is echoed by the Ramban and Rabbeinu Bachaya II, and the Maharal of Prague, and all the Rabbeim, down to edited talks of our Rebbe. When you have that kind of trust in Hashem, you open new portals for bracha. You bring forth Hashem's blessing. So I think what's going on is like this, and I don't know this for sure, but this is what I think. You're not going to lose the reward of your mitzvah. You can't lose the reward of your mitzvah. It's not fair. Hashem doesn't say, oh, you took a thank you? You enjoyed that? Thank you? No more. Your mitzvah's gone. That doesn't make any sense. But we're talking about Bitachon here. And the reward of Bitachon is that Hashem gives you because you trusted Hashem. You have to really have Bitachon. And Bitachon means, in this milieu of mitzvah observance, that I devote myself to Hashem Yisbarach. I do it with a purity of heart. And the soul of success is that it's a gift from Hashem. That it's not something I did. That it's, I'm grateful, I thank Hashem for the privilege of having been successful in the performance of a mitzvah. When a Yid does that, and he has pure Bitachon in Hashem, and the Bitachon carries over, this trust in Hashem carries into how he reacts to success, then indeed the blessings of Bitachon are yours. I think that's what he means when he says, Yafsid Ma'asehu. Doesn't mean he loses the action. It doesn't say Yafsid Mitzvaseh. He says you lose the action, the Bitachon-infused action, the trust action. Ya'abed Schara, he's referring to the reward of trust.
So it changes your perspective on the result then, because you'll receive what Hashem needs you to have, rather than what they may be the same as what you would ask for, but it may not be. But if you have Bitachon and you've done your part and you're confident in it, then whatever Hashem gives you, it's Baruch Hashem. It may not be what you originally sought for.
If you're saying whatever Hashem gives is for the best, whether it's good or bad, that's called emunah. That's called I have faith in Hashem.
Okay.
You have to go back, remember this 118th episode, you have to go back to the earlier episodes. We talk, Bitachon means I know with certainty it's going to be good. How do you know with certainty? Because I know Hashem only wants good for me, and it's going to be good. Not good on some faith level. Good in this world. Toiv hanirav hanigla, a good which is open, overt, and obvious, a good I can taste. A good that's sweet. And I trust in Hashem. That act of trust actually brings you those blessings. That's what we learned early on. That's the power of Bitachon. I think that's what we're talking about here. If you start to rejoice in your success, thinking it's my success, my hard-earned success, if you think it's your success, you lose the gift of Bitachon. If you put your trust in Hashem and your attitude is, thank you Hashem for this amazing opportunity, for this gift, and you put your trust in Hashem, then the rewards of Bitachon are yours. But if a person has that kind of attitude, where it's, I did this, I succeeded, I worked hard, it's my success, don't forget to thank me because I did this. If that's your attitude, you lost the Bitachon. Then the gift of Bitachon is gone. The mitzvah is a mitzvah. But we're talking about Bitachon here. And this answers really all the questions. Because first of all, Bitachon is an enormously difficult thing. Rabbeinu Bachaya sets the bar very high. He makes all kinds of guarantees. And you could rid yourself of anxiety, have no anxiety whatsoever. Somebody said to me, I love it. Really? No anxiety? I said, yeah, before you say you love it, start working on it. It's not easy. It's a big promise he makes to you, and it can be done. It can be achieved. It's tremendously difficult. So, when he comes along and he makes these demands of al yismach and al yachpeitz, let that be not your joy, he's really serious about this. When he says, this is not lip service, when a person goes ahead and says, when I have this opportunity to a mitzvah, I say, Yachshav b'libahu toiva me'es Hashem. Baruch Hashem, I got to give away that money, and I was able to help this poor person. Oh, thank you Hashem for that schus. It's not lip service. You actually believe that. Yeah, it's not so simple. A lot of people think, mine. So to be able to believe that, to really feel that way, Yachshav b'libahu, you feel that way. And then not to get swept away by your success, because it's a gift from Hashem. Then you're able to maintain the gift of Bitachon, even if you're getting credit, and even if people are thanking you, even if they're showing appreciation, which is all fine, it's all fine. But in your mind, what you're really grateful for, what you're really happy for, is that you had the privilege to make a real difference. And this, I don't know, this to me seems like the pshat. This kind of all puts it all together. So, just like we talked about the idea of fasting, is it part of atonement? No. Does it play an important role? Yes. So you're losing your mitzvah, says Rabbeinu Bachaya. No, you're not losing your mitzvah. You're losing your reward for the mitzvah. No. But you lose your act of Bitachon. And you lose the reward of Bitachon. So this concludes the business, the fifth segment, which deals with the concept of mitzvah performance. And in our sixth section now of the fourth chapter, we're going to go into reward and punishment for the reward. Are you doing it for the reward? Does Hashem not guarantee rewards? And how does the concept of reward and expectation, how does that intersect and dovetail with the concept of Bitachon? So for this, you got to keep joining us. Anyway, thank you for coming tonight. And may we all be strengthened. May we all have proper Bitachon in Hashem. May we reap the gifts of Bitachon. And may we merit the Mirz Hashem out of full Bitachon, that we should finally see the 3 weeks abolished forever. And we should see the Beis HaMikdash rise with the coming of Mashiach, b'mheira, u'biyameinu, amen. Thank you for joining. Please share. Please subscribe to youtube.com/Ari Mendel Kaplan. And comment. And let's improve the metrics and get the word out there. Thank you.